Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
A lot of the people that we talk to on the podcast are buying rental properties for cash flow. They want to buy properties that are going to put money in their pocket every single month. Every once in a while, we talk to someone that has kind of a different strategy where they're buying rental properties for appreciation, which can also be very lucrative. Tiffany, you're actually doing both, right?
Yes, Dan. So correct. Originally, we were in Chicago, and we were buying multifamily. And that kind of just made sense in Chicago because that's, more typical there. It's harder to buy single family and make money. But when we moved to Texas, we did change strategies. It was easier to buy single families. There's just not as many multifamilies in Texas for one. But we are in a hugely growing area. And so I just thought it made more sense to buy for appreciation.
All of Tiffany's rentals are making money. They're just making money in different ways. The Chicago properties are putting money in her pocket every month, where the Texas properties are appreciating and they'll put money in her pocket in the future. So on the podcast today, we're going to take a look at her numbers. We'll see if it makes sense what she's doing. We'll talk about her rentals, talk about what she's buying, and see how she manages her Chicago properties from Texas. Joining us on the show today from San Antonio is Tiffany Dumond. We'll take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll meet Tiffany. A good deal on a rental property isn't going to last very long. To win properties today, you need to move quickly when a deal comes on the market, but it takes time to analyze a property. I want to let you know about an app where you can analyze deals on your phone in seconds. It's called Ask Rick, that's RIC for Rental Income Calculator. You can analyze a deal with the push of a button. You can figure out the rent, your mortgage payment, your expenses, and figure out the cash flow. If the numbers make sense, you can make an offer right there on the app, or you can send a calendar invite to your agent to see the property in person. Ask Rick is currently offering a free 7-day trial. Just search for Ask Rick in the App Store or go to Just Ask Rick. That's RIC. JustAskRick.com. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified, and I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Tiffany, when you first started buying rental properties, you were living in Chicago, and that's a great market for cash flow. There's a lot of great cash flow opportunities in Chicago. But I imagine that there's also areas that maybe don't cash flow as well, but they see more appreciation. So did you ever think about buying for appreciation when you were living in Chicago?
No, Dan. So it would be extremely difficult to buy, houses for appreciation in Chicago. Houses are very expensive there. So it's just, not the same type of market. It just makes more sense, to buy multifamily.
Right. Now, with investing for appreciation, I always get a little bit nervous doing that, because with cash flow, you can really work out your numbers. You can see what the rent's going to be. You can kind of predict what your expenses are going to be and kind of figure out what you're going to be making, where with appreciation, you're really just hoping that the economy keeps going strong and prices keep going up. Does that ever make you nervous that if you don't hit it exactly right, that you could have a long period where prices don't really move much?
Not really. Yes and no. So I think what I did a little differently as well, with the exception of the first house I bought, the other homes that I've bought, they were pretty much full rehabs. So I bought them for a good price. I did put a decent amount of money into them. But, after I rehab them, I was able to do a cash out refinance. So I was able to work the numbers. At that point, I could have said, okay, I want to do, take out, 20% or, leave 20% in. But if the numbers didn't make sense, I could have left, 25% in. But at the same time, I know that, the appreciation is still, so good. So even my goal at that point, when I kind of crunched numbers, I was okay with maybe 3 to 4%, return on cash. But like I said, I just wanted that appreciation. And I knew that, again, even if I'm breaking even the first couple of years, I would be fine after that.
Right. That's a good point too, because rents are going to increase over time. So if you're at a break even when you buy it, when you're 10 years in, you might actually be cash flowing pretty good on that property.
Correct.
Now, do your properties, the properties in Texas, the properties that you're buying for appreciation, do they make money every month, or are you renting it out for basically the mortgage payment?
So the two properties, I would say the one property in San Antonio, at some point last year, the taxes did go up quite a bit. So I was in the hole for a little bit. I did fight the taxes and I got that back down. So now I'm making, again, about $300 a month cash flow on it. The other property in San Antonio, I've always cash flowed. Again, it's probably, about the same $300 a month, nothing crazy. And the one here in New Braunfels right now, it does decent. I'm renting that for $1,650, for about 850 square feet. So again, not terrible. But definitely not killing it on the cash flow.
Right. Yeah. And, I think it's important too, just to point out that like, you don't really need the cash flow. I mean, like, so that was a big part of you deciding to invest for appreciation, because you've got enough money to pay your bills. Like you weren't looking for income. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So yeah, my husband makes, decent money. He's in medical sales. And so, it really, was not that important to us at this stage of our life. Again, the Chicago properties do cash flow quite well. And so because we had also that cash flow, it just wasn't as concerning to go for cash flow here in Texas.
Sure. Well, let's look at some of the deals. Maybe we can compare the difference between the Chicago and the Texas properties to see how the numbers work. So let's look at one of your deals. For Chicago, can you maybe tell me like what you paid for the property and what you put into fixing it up?
Sure. So a good example is our property in Pilsen. So if any listeners out there know the Pilsen neighborhood, we have a building at basically 20th and Racine. And at the time we bought that, so that was back in 2014. So we bought it for $155,000. And it was kind of funny because at the time we just started hearing so much about Pilsen. I'm from Chicago, actually, from the north side. But I just started hearing like people just talking about Pilsen constantly, the development, how much it was growing there. So literally one weekend, my husband and I just started driving around there and we were like, wow, yeah, this is, pretty cool neighborhood. So a couple of weeks after that, we, went on vacation to Mexico. This opportunity came along. We put in a bid sight unseen, came back and saw it and, loved it. So yeah, we completely gutted the building for the most part. We did all new electrical, plumbing, roof, decks, like we moved walls. So we put in $120,000. And so we just ended up doing a refinance a couple of weeks ago to be a 15 years so that we pay that off sooner. And it just appraised for $625,000.
Wow. Okay. So you were all in for like just under 300. And
so yeah, 275.
275.
Correct.
And it's worth 625 right now.
Correct.
Wow. And that's not one of your appreciation properties. That's your cash flow property, but you've made a ton of appreciation on it. I love it. What's the total rent for that building?
So we make about just over $4,000, about $4,050 a month. Yes.
Right. So $4,000 a month, and you're all in at $275. So that is incredible cash flow.
Yeah. And
that's
our
really
mortgage
good.
is about $1,800.
Okay.
So
yeah, so that's great. Now let's compare that to one of your properties in Texas. So tell me one of your rentals, what did you pay for it?
So the first one that I bought in San Antonio, on French, I bought it for $215,000.
Okay. And did you put any work into fixing that up?
At first I really didn't. I just, it was pretty much rent ready. I just, painted it, did some minor things. Last year, the foundation just started going bad. So I did put about $8,000 into that, and then decided at that time also to, do some work in the kitchen. I did replace the bottom cabinets, not the top, just because they were the original kind of glass charming cabinets. And I did quartz counters and a backsplash. So probably all in maybe, $13,000. And I make $1,700 a month in rent.
Okay. So yeah, so the numbers are a bit tighter on that. So does that property, say after you pay the mortgage, are you making much on that property?
Yeah, that's, so last year I was in the hole, but because I fought the property taxes, yeah, I'm making about $300 a month.
Okay.
But nothing crazy. So,
right. Now you're buying that for appreciation. Has that property appreciated since you bought it?
Yeah. So that, I bought in, later 2016. And I would say if I put it on the market right now, I would probably put it on the market for about $295.
Okay.
And I bought it for $215.
All right. So you've made about $80,000 on that property.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, if you compare that to Chicago, like the Chicago property, you created a bunch of, well, I guess like with the Chicago property going up so much, is that because you fixed it up, or is that because that market appreciated too?
A little bit of both. I do like to rehab properties and add value. So I would say our strategy in all of the properties have been to find something that needed work, but also to find obviously in good neighborhoods. So yes, all of the properties, we put some amount of work into them. But again, like 1020s and Pilsen, it's a little bit of both. We did put a bunch of money in. Again, it was a full rehab. All the kitchens were redone, bathrooms. And so yes, it appreciated a lot for the work we put in, but also for the neighborhood, as well as the other properties we own as well there.
And Tiffany, I think you're underselling yourself with how much work you put in. Tiffany sent me over some before and after pictures of her properties, and they are absolutely incredible. I'll go ahead and put those on the website if anyone wants to take a look at them. Go to rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 314, and you can look it up. Did you have a construction background?
Nope. My background is I have a CPA.
Wow. So how did you learn how to fix up properties and do such a good job at it?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think like everyone, it's so funny. I watched a whole lot of HGTV, and like many people who kind of get into the business, then you watch it and you're like, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I just started doing it.
Wow. That is incredible. And so are you managing the properties yourself, or do you have a property manager?
No, I actually manage it all myself. But again, it goes back to, I think it's important if you're going to be managing properties in another city, the key is really having a great handyman. So my tenants, if something goes wrong, they absolutely reach out to me first. But in all honesty, I just literally copy and paste the text message of what's wrong and send it to my handyman and say, when can you go? And that's it. And again, I have 2 different guys for the different properties, based on location, and they're both amazing. And so, yeah, it's really, I don't have an issue managing, the properties in Chicago.
Now, what about when you have a turnover? Like, say for like doing showings or getting a new tenant in there, how are your handymen helping you out with that, or do you have someone else that helps you?
Yeah, interesting, Dan. So, this last year during COVID, I had 5 turnovers. Again, I know people just made a lot of different life decisions during that time. Sure. And so really, because of COVID as well, I just asked my tenants to show the properties. I basically said, hey, I'll offer you $25 a showing. Can you please show it? Because that's, during COVID, it was worse to put them out and then add someone else into the mix going into an apartment. And actually they were fine with that. But prior to COVID, I had the neighbor that lived behind our house. At some point, she wanted to be a real estate agent. Never became one just because she had 8 kids. Mm-hmm. But she would, if there's a turnover, I would just pay her hourly to go show apartments.
Okay, so you'll list the property online, you'll take all the calls.
Yep.
And then when it's somebody wants to see the property, then you'll just arrange to have someone let the person in. And then you can do everything over the phone after that?
Correct. And actually, funny story when I think about all of the tenants I have now, with the exception of one, I could not tell you. I have never met any of them, and I couldn't tell you what they looked like.
Wow. That's incredible. Wow.
Right.
And so in your local properties, is it the same? Like, do you find yourself going out to the properties because you're local, or is it the same thing that you can do a lot of it over the phone and online?
No, yeah. When I do meet all my tenants, and when I lived in Chicago, I actually enjoy being, a landlord. I know a lot of people don't. I actually truly enjoy it, and enjoy like meeting my tenants. So yes, I absolutely, I meet all of them here, and I do show the properties here. It's just unfortunate I can't do it anymore in Chicago. But when we did live there, I did show all the units.
Yeah. Do you find that there's a difference between the tenants, or is one easier to work with? You always people in single family homes, a lot of times those tenants get a rap that they're easier to work with, where people in multifamily maybe move a lot, or maybe they're maybe not as high quality tenants as someone in a single family. Have you found that to be true?
Not really. Again, our strategy has been to always have really nice units. So we put, and I know sometimes people have different strategies and they, sometimes think I'm crazy, but, we did nice cabinets, granite. We really, made the units very nice. We're after a better tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that differs. And our buildings also are in, nicer locations in Chicago. And I do, even though I can't meet them, I do interview them and ask them, quite a lot of questions. I want to know that, they're going to take care of the place. And I encourage them to ask me questions, so that, we have a rapport. And I always encourage, hey, if anything's wrong, just call me, reach out to me. I'll fix it immediately. And so I think that helps as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned earlier, I want to kind of circle back to something that you mentioned, that you said you refied your properties to a 15-year mortgage. I guess the properties in Chicago.
Correct.
Why did you do that? Just to get them paid off sooner?
Yes. So obviously we're, in an extreme low interest rate environment here, not too long ago. And so it just made sense. Most of those properties were right around 4.5%. And of course, back then that was low. But I was able to get 3 1/8.
Wow.
And so my cash flow is changing by a couple $100 a month. But again, those buildings cash flow quite well. And so a couple $100 is, not that much of a loss when I think about paying it off that much sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. The 15-year mortgage has come up so many times on the podcast over the last few months. I don't know if it's just random that so many people are doing the 15, or if it's just in this environment we're in, it just makes more sense to get your properties paid off faster. But
gosh, yeah. When you're looking at 3 1/8, it's almost like, how can you say no to that?
Right,
it's
exactly.
Ridiculously cheap money. So yeah, why not?
Yeah. Do you think you would ever pay it off sooner than 15 years?
No. Yeah, I know people do like to pay down their mortgages. I actually don't believe in that. Funny enough, just because it's cash you're not getting a return on. And if I have extra cash in my pocket, most likely I'm just going to go find another property to buy.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're interested in investing in the San Antonio market, Tiffany is a full-time realtor. She does a lot of work with investors. If you're even thinking about investing out that way, definitely reach out to Tiffany. I think that she'd be a great resource for you. I've got her contact information on the website. Just go to rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 314. And I've also got those before and after pictures from her rehabs. It's really incredible, the work that she's done. If you get a second, definitely check out those pictures. rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 314. I'd like to thank today's sponsor for making this episode possible. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. If you're looking to buy your first rental or you want to add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge. She's a nationwide lender, and she specializes in helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more, or if you want to set up a time to talk to Chaley personally, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. If you mention Rental Income Podcast, she will waive all the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Make sure you subscribe or follow the show. We put out new interviews every single Tuesday, and if you subscribe, you'll get notified as soon as they come out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.